Phones are open here, 836-9299-723-2243. We're on with Congressman Ron Kind. I got to ask, I'm going to be the dumb guy in the street, I guess.
Sure.
But how did the student loan thing come down? How did that all get attached to this? There are some people that are just going, huh?
It was really strange. And the student loan bill is important in the fact that we're able to, by cutting out the middlemen, the banks that were normally providing loans for students, only with 100% federal guarantee. So there was no risk that they were taking, although they were taking their commissions and fees and their cut from providing these student loans, which this bill will set up. And if this idea to take out the middlemen in student loan programs like Pell Grants for low-income students, and that's why it got attached to it, even though it wasn't health care related.
Okay, it's 824 News Talk 790 WAYY. John and Bob here today on the Valley's Morning News. And back to good morning, Brian. You're on News Talk 790.
Good morning. Just listening to the congressman, the number of falsities are just stacking up. And I'm not going to pull a Joe Wilson because I guess I respect the office too much, I suppose. But
could you explain some of the falsities, though?
Okay, 45 million uninsured. 20%, this is according to factcheck.org, 20% of them are 9 million. Our families have made over $75,000 a year. I don't know about you, John, but that's quite a bit more than I make. 26% or 11.7 million of them were eligible for other public coverage. 21% or 9.45 million of them were legal or illegal immigrants, being non-citizens. So now we're down to 15 million. Okay, but of course the congressman continues to use the term 45 million or 40 million. Of that 45 million, 40% of the uninsured were 28 years or younger, many of whom chose not to get insurance because they felt they were healthy. I have a friend that works for UPS, makes $77,000 a year, and has good insurance. But before that, he was working for another company making $50, didn't have insurance, and didn't buy it because he's a young guy. Figured,
sure,
well, he's healthy.
That's right.
Okay, he talks about
nothing's going to happen to him until something does.
He talks about real competition in the loans, the school loan industry, as if somehow putting the government in there causes real competition. He talked about loans being guaranteed so there was no risk, and that's why the government had to come in. Well, Ron, you know that FDIC insures every dollar we put into every bank in this nation. Do you think the government should also take over all of the banks because there's no risk in being a bank and lending? I mean, you've been in there for 14 years, Ron. Why all of a sudden now are you this champion of health care? I mean, why didn't you do something in the last 14 years?
Well, Brian, if I may respond briefly. First of all, I mean, the costs of the uninsured are already built into the system. The average person who's paying for health care coverage in their lives today is paying an additional $1,100 a year because of the cost shifting occurring from those who do get sick or injured, who don't have health care. They walk into the emergency room, and that's their primary health care treatment that they're receiving. Emergency room services, which are much more expensive than other type of health care services. So even though young people may be choosing not to sign up, they're just one illness, one injury, one sickness away from financial ruin or having to go in and utilize those emergency services only to have those costs shifted onto people who do have health care. So I think it was important that we try to expand the pool of people who are getting health care coverage so those costs don't continue to be shifted onto people who do have
So
health
what
care.
You're doing now then is you're shifting the costs of all of those uninsured, which is the 15 million uninsured, you're shifting those costs onto all of us who are then.
No, not necessarily. I mean, young adults will be able to stay on their parents' plan if the parents choose, up to the age of 26. That's for kids who are going to school or just starting a job who may not have the financial means to obtain health coverage on their own. Yeah. That's something that takes effect this year already.
Right, but Ron, who's going to pay for that?
Keeping adults on the health pool
Ron,
until the age of 26.
Ron, I know that you're too smart for this. I know that you know that if you put 35 million people on insurance who didn't have it before, everybody's rates are going to go up. The money's got to come from somewhere, Ron. You know that.
Well,
you
Brian,
know that the efficiencies are not there to cover 35 million people.
Brian,
so what's going to happen is the insurance premiums go up, insurance companies go out of business, and before long, we have a single-payer, government-sponsored healthcare system, which is exactly what you people wanted in the first place.
Brian, let me say this. The whole concept of insurance is being able to spread the risk out to a large pool of people. And that's why getting young people into this pool is one of the easiest and cheapest things that we can do. But it's important that they get in the pool so that they're not utilizing the emergency room as their primary care physician.
So you're going to force young people. So what you plan to do is you have signed a law, you voted for a law that now forces these young people to buy insurance.
No, actually, Brian,
against their will,
Brian,
so that you can spread the cost around all of us old people who get sick.
Brian, this is what we're saying. You can choose to get insurance. You can choose not to get insurance.
Or
But
pay a fine.
if you choose not to get health insurance, we're asking you to contribute a little bit to the system.
You're not asking,
So
Ron, you're not
Brian,
asking, you're telling.
Please let me respond.
You're telling.
At least have the courtesy to allow me to respond to your question.
Well, then don't lie. Don't say you're asking.
I'm sorry, Brian.
Can we continue on now?
Yeah.
Okay.
But don't say you're asking. You're telling them they have to.
No,
Contribute.
Brian, I'm trying to explain. They can choose not to get insurance if they want to, but we're asking them to contribute some to the system so that the costs don't get shifted onto other people when they do get sick or injured, when they do have to go into the emergency room for treatment. But they can still choose not to have coverage. But we're going to be asking them to contribute. It's something called shared responsibility in our community.
Can they choose not to pay the fine?
Well, they can choose, but there's going to be a fine that they're going to have, like a speeding ticket.
So you're not asking. Admit that, Ron. Admit that you're not asking.
Brian, they don't have to get health coverage if they don't want to, but they're going to be asked to contribute money.
You're not asking them to contribute. You're forcing them.
I really don't see where this is going.
Brian,
of course you do. You don't want to answer the question. That's the problem.
No. We can expand this. We can extrapolate this to all kinds of things here. I can run the stoplight every day if I want to. Every day I can run it. But eventually somebody's going to say you're going to have to pay a fine for that. You're going to have to go to court for that. So at that point, yes, the government does tell me what I have to do.
So no one's asking you not to run the stop sign. They're telling you not to run the stop sign.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
That's exactly the point.
That's exactly the point.
He's not asking people to pay the fine. They are telling them that they will contribute. He keeps saying, but if you don't buy it, we're going to ask you to contribute to the system. Well, if you ask me, Ron, I can say, well, I'm sorry, Ron, I don't want to contribute to the system. In which case you say, well, okay, have a nice day.
All right.
But it is you're telling me to, and if I don't, there's going to be somebody from the government who will fine me, show up at my door, and force me to pay it or pay the consequences.
Brian, thank you for your call. We appreciate it. Good morning. This is News Talk 790 WAYY.